My family life, I think, impacted my vocation a great deal. I grew up in a family that didn't always practice the faith, which is something I think a lot of people in our time can relate to. Early in my life, I have two older brothers, and when we were 1, 3, and 5, my father died of Lou Gehrig's disease. And that was sort of the moment in which church and spirituality, religious life became more difficult for the family. And so for a number of years, although my mom really, I think, struggled to bring us to church and really tried, being young children and being difficult, I think sometimes in church it was difficult. And so over time we fell away from the faith, from the regular practice of the faith. I went to Catholic school, and so I received the sacraments, as many kids do in grade 2 and grade 8, but didn't really go much beyond that. It was later on in my teenage years, after I had had a period of even moving away from home, just being really tired and trying to find answers in life, being tired with the struggles that my family had gone through and just trying to reestablish myself. I moved away from home for a little while. Then I came back home, and I was still in the midst of this questioning, how does this all make sense? Thankfully, I didn't get into too much trouble during that time, but eventually, a good friend of mine in high school invited me to come to a youth group retreat over March break. And I was just at such a point where I said, well, I'm almost near the end of high school. I was in grade 12, and I really just need to know once and for all, does God exist? Does it matter if I believe in Him? Is this going to matter for my life? And so I went to the retreat, and the first moment we got there, we sat in front of the Blessed Sacrament exposed on the altar, and from that first moment I knew that this is real. And this really matters, and it's something that I need as part of my life, not only to make sense of what has happened in my life, but to give me strength to really live out something worthwhile in our world. You know, in the midst of so many other directions that you could go in, you need something really to be able to ground you and to give you meaning. Well, as I said, I went to this youth group retreat in grade 12, and there was a good group of friends that I got to know thereafter, and we spent a lot of time together. And there was about 5 fellows who we were all thinking about the priesthood, about really taking seriously this life of faith that we all discovered at different times throughout high school and throughout our lives. And so a number of them were going to seminary. And so I decided that I would also go to seminary and give it a try. But it was only a month later, after I entered seminary, that I left seminary. So in fact, I'm a seminary dropout. So I left seminary. I'd gone to seminary in London originally. Left just because I wasn't prepared to give my whole self to it. You know, I was holding on to so much for myself, whether it be relationships with friends outside of the seminary or just anxieties within, not being willing to really give it all over to the Lord, not being willing to take that full step. And so I left seminary after just a month in London, and I took the rest of the year to work. I delivered pizzas for a little while, which was a great job, worked in a drugstore, and in the second half of that year, in the end of February until about the beginning of June, I decided to go up to a place called Madonna House in Northern Ontario. It's a lay community, and they just do very simple work. They have a farm, they have a sugar bush, and in fact those are the 2 jobs I was assigned to do when I was up there, trudging through the sugar bush, collecting sap, and then later on cleaning out the barns for the animals. So very simple community, very simple life, but a life really given over, a community rooted in the gospel, trying to find Christ in our daily lives in simple tasks. And so it was a real, a wonderful year for reflection for me, you know, getting down to just basic things, working, you know, doing what we can, and really praying to God to help enlighten me. Is this the step I need to take? Do I need to give my full self to this to really find that joy that I'm seeking out? And so I entered seminary shortly thereafter in September of that year. The reaction of my family and friends is always, certainly my friends, because I had these friends from high school that were taking their faith very seriously, were very supportive. And I think a lot of the friends I had, even before coming back to the faith, were quite supportive, seeing that this was something that really brought a real joy to my life. And so they recognized that, my friends. My family, you know, I think my mom wondered whether this was just a phase I was going through, whether it's something that would pass. I don't think it was really until the latter years of seminary, in the past couple of years, that it's really become real. and become something they see as a great joy, not only for me, but for them in their lives. I think there's no greater joy that a parent can feel than to see their son or daughter praised by others, but not just praised for being wonderful themselves, but for being able to see that God is working in a very deep way through their son or daughter. And so, the family's reaction has been different at times. It's been wonderful to be able to spend some time with them when I'm home over the summers, to get to know one another, I think, in a different way, to really grow up in a sense, become a man myself, and be able to relate with them in a new way, especially given the vocation that God has called me to. And it's been a great joy the past couple of years. I think of my mom at my ordination and just the joy that I saw on her face, and my brothers. And it's been a wonderful experience for family life to come together and to really begin to reflect on the depth of what God has done in each one of our lives to bring us to where we're at. I mean, especially in my life, my father dying, but I think for all my family members, that's true. And the gift of a vocation, of being called by God to something as wonderful as priesthood, has really brought so much of that into perspective. It goes all the way back to the beginning when my mom was caring for my father. She's a nurse when he was sick with Lou Gehrig's disease. I think that suffering and that love really was the heart of my vocation, because essentially what we're doing in priesthood is offering our lives for another, offering to love someone even in their suffering, in their pains, and hopefully in their joys as well. So family life is really the root of my vocation, and it's really come to fruition in the recent years. St. Augustine has been a wonderful experience. It's great to be in the midst of a solid Catholic community of guys who are all trying to become saints, trying to become not only saints, but just become good men. Even if men leave the seminary, the goal is to be a good Christian man in our world, ordained or not. I also went to St. Philip's Seminary before entering St. Augustine's, and that was, I think, the first fundamental place for me to enter into and to give my life. St. Philip's is, a little bit, you might say, a more closed community, and more traditional, in the sense you wear a cassock and you really enter into some more of the traditions of the church. But it was a wonderful experience to be really grounded in something solid, something that comes to us not from 20 or 30 years ago, as none of our faith does, but something that is really grounded in 500,000, 2,000 years of history. And you really got that sense when I was there. And I think same thing coming now to St. Augustine's, to see, even in this chapel that we're sitting in, 100 years of Catholic history, 100 years of men being formed for the priesthood, men seeking after holiness, and to really see the great value that tradition has, and something that we can really hold on to. My family, of course, has been very supportive, but more than that, there was a wonderful group of priests in my home diocese that really exemplified what it meant to be a good priest, to give your life for others, and to show others the way to Christ, to bring them to Christ. There was a group of young men who gathered with a priest on Saturday mornings at one point when I was in high school. We'd gather it was way too early in the morning, about 6:30 or something on a Saturday morning. And we'd gather together and have a holy hour together, and then there would be a book we would read month after month. And so we would talk about that book and have breakfast together. And so it's priests like that who are willing to make sacrifices, priests that were willing to make time to speak to you, to take you seriously, to enter into whatever you're going through, that really made the difference and gave me the courage to continue to ask the question, am I called? I've had the opportunity to go to a number of different places I would have never imagined I would go. And I think on each one, there's particular things that stand out. Certainly the goal of the pilgrimage, the place you're aiming towards, is very important. But I think pilgrimage is very much rooted in something deeper, what God is doing in the journey that you are going through. As important as it is for each of us, and the ultimate joy of our life is to get to heaven, God is also doing things here on earth to prepare us. And it's the same thing. We take many pilgrimages, which I think are a reflection of that greater pilgrimage that we have towards the kingdom. Be willing to enter into it. There's nothing more wonderful than really following God. You know, there's questions that come up at all times in our lives, in all situations, whatever we enter into, but not to be afraid, to really give yourself to Christ, and to see it as a real possibility that you could be called to be a priest, that God does desire even, you know, a simple folk, nothing special, just ordinary men and women, to give our lives for Him, so that He can do great things in our world, in our lives, that it all can come together. Well, very much looking forward to the coming months. It's going to be wonderful to be finished school and to have the experience of entering into the parish community, entering into what it really is to be a priest. For so many years we study. I've been in seminary now for 7-8 years, and so it's just going to be wonderful to settle down, to be a part of a community, to celebrate the Eucharist, to see God nourishing people in the concrete, in the sacraments especially. You know, hearing confessions, I think, is going to be an amazing experience, because I know how important it's been for my life. To be able to offer that to other people is going to be just wonderful. Really looking forward to it. There's a number of different things depending on the time of year that I do. Certainly in the summer I like to get outside and go camping, put the canoe on the car and just disappear somewhere into the wilderness. I do that every summer. I try and get out. And when I'm in seminary, when I'm even home for Christmas break, one of my greatest joys is just being with friends. I've been amazed at the depth of friendships that I formed in being in seminary. You really discover what it means to be a friend to somebody, what it means to be a brother. And so I think that's one of the big things I do as well. Of course, as I said, I've been on a number of pilgrimages, and so traveling is certainly one of the hobbies I enjoy. So there's all kinds of different things. You go with the flow and see what comes and see what opportunities come up, and always surprised at the different things that I'm able to do.